understand pretty clearly, it's going to be from the grace of God. It's always going to be God's grace, and the way that you respond to that and cooperate with God's grace. However, God gives us a bunch of tools as well to work with, and he says you need to work with those tools. So the things that help people be successful in life are by and large going to be the same for people who are from families who are not undergoing divorce and families that do undergo divorce. The same things are going to be helpful for both. But we're going to look at the differences, and Julie's going to present that, but let me talk some more about that. So let me mention a few of the things. First of all, as I said, when I grew up, I had a community of people that were surrounding me that were Catholic. And these were, I mean, we had at least 100 kids of all the same ranges, and I was in Catholic school, and I was in Catholic church, and we were going to, if we didn't go to Catholic church, granted, like when I got old enough, and you probably had the same story, Mom and Dad would let you go to Mass, or you'd be altar serving or whatever, and you might skip Mass, or bring the bulletin home with you, or something, or just kind of catch the homage. Okay, you're looking at me, Dad. Okay, now I'm not saying I did that ever. No, I never did that. I just heard stories about that. You're surrounded by people that are like-minded and part of the community. Catholics. You're part of the school, you're part of the church. Everybody's looking out for you. You're part of the ball games, the organizations, the dances that you go to, the kids that you're meeting to connect with, at those dances and dating are probably going to be like you, Catholic, And when you go away to colleges, you're going to probably be going to the Newman Centers, etc. So these are the things that are supporting you in staying in the faith and giving you some sort of identity. For me, what was essential to me was the church, my involvement in the church. In all the ways that I connected to the church, as my family disintegrated, my involvement in the church gave me a rock-solid part of my identity. And Christ was the center, and continues to be the center of my life, of my marriage, of my family. And that is, some people see themselves, I could see myself as Italian, I could see myself as an American. What I see myself as is a Catholic. That's my identity, is God's child. And I worship in the Catholic Church. Now, others may not worship in the Catholic Church. I know that there was the ecumenical discussion that we're having, but we're children of God, and that's our identity. And I clung to that through the Catholic Church. And all of the tools that the Catholic Church offered to me. My parents, when I was in seminary, my parents pursued and attained an annulment. And that process of them pursuing and getting the annulment was extraordinarily healing for me. It was extraordinarily healing for me. It freed me. If I could just say, it released me from some of the, I want to say maybe the shame or the anxiety or guilt or whatever those negative feelings were. You would think, how could that do that for a child? But it did. And it gave me hope. And then when my mom remarried, she remarried in the Catholic Church. My father never remarried. However, it gave me, and it's not as if I needed legitimacy, but I felt that way. I felt so healed by that process, and I wanted to share that with other people as well. So all of these components were all tools that God was providing through the church, through the Catholic Church. Okay, and this is typical, and let me just kind of see, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed. The church has this constant presence in our everyday life, and it's a strong guide with structure and direction. And it celebrates with us at all the key moments of our lives. We've got the sacraments and the ceremonies, and you can think of it, from the couple comes together and they're married, and then they have a child and the child is baptized, and then there's in the times when they fall away in sin, there's reconciliation, and then there's the Eucharist, which feeds us on a weekly and maybe for some a daily basis. Okay, when we reach confirmation age, you know, as we are maturing, we're confirmed. And then we have our, again, back to the marriage, and we have the, or vocational priesthood, or if you could become a religious sister. They have ceremonies for all that. And then when we're sick, they anoint us. And when we die, they bury us. And they have all of these things for people throughout their whole lives. One of the difficulties is that when you get divorced, after you get divorced, it's a huge transition. A huge transition in your life. Matter of fact, if you think about the stressors in your life, if you think about those stressors, what are the number one stressor? What is it? Buying a house? No, probably not. The death of a loved one, moving from a house, getting a new job or getting fired from a job. What else is there? Okay, sickness, etc. You can think of, you know, all of these different stressors, but could anything be more stressful than a divorce? I don't see how it could be, because your whole world is really changed when you go through a divorce. And you're going to experience possibly loss of income, you're going to experience having to move, losing your house, possible sicknesses and deaths, losing parts of your family, all sort of at once. Or maybe not all at once, but really you're going to go through all of that. Huge, huge, huge transition. Where is the church in all of that? How do they help you manage that transition? I don't think they do. All the other transitions in your life, the church is there to help you. Now, I would say it's not institutionalized. We do have the annulment process, but in order to get an annulment, you already have to be divorced. So it's that, where are they there? Where are they there? How are they helping? And we're going to talk about that. We're going to look at that. We're going to offer some tools to help you as ministers to help divorced families. But there's that gap. Now, we looked at marriage and how things have changed throughout history. And we said that, you know, God really does not like divorce. And the reason is it really is very destructive. And that marriage is really so important for us, not only just as individuals, but also in building up society. However, see, historically, marriage has changed. And I think we're going to probably hear about that this afternoon or in one of the later talks. Hopefully we'll be able to hear more about that. But you can think about the historic reasons why people used to get married. You've got political reasons, economic reasons, joining together of families, etc. So it wasn't necessarily for what we would think would be the right reasons, but they were important reasons nonetheless. You used to have arranged marriages. Now, a lot of that has moved and people are marrying for love. But what does that mean for love? You see, you're all with me on this, right? And you can see even most recently with the Supreme Court decision on how it's changed the nature, not changed the nature of marriage, but the definition of what you consider marriage. So all of that historically has changed over the years. But not what the church teaches about marriage, not the sacramental marriage, not what God's plan for marriage is. And when we talk about God's plan for marriage and loving the way that God loves, if you're involved in pre-Cana preparations or marriage preparations at all, you know that God's plan for marriage are what I call the 4 F's, but it's actually 3 F's and a T there. So every time that you're going to express your love sexually, it has to have those 4 components to it. It has to be free, full, or total, faithful, and fruitful. And if not, those are the ways that God loves. And if you're not loving that way, you're not really quite loving, you're falling short of the way that God loves. And that's what God's calling you to in marriage. If you're not marrying in a sacramental way, you're going to fall short in some of those ways. Can you see that? Okay, so and likely it's going to end in a divorce. So what we're looking to do here is to help people understand what the nature of marriage actually is, and then also to support them when their marriages fail and bring them, give them the support that they need so that they can have a success story. Now, am I leaving anything out here?
No.
Okay, great. So I'm going to end with this, and we're going to transition into Julie talking. Essentially, what we've heard is that prior to 1977, and I've heard a few people mention this, if you had a divorce, you were excommunicated. I find that to be, I never really kind of knew that. And I tried to wrap my mind around that. I knew that if you divorced and then remarried without getting an annulment, that you couldn't receive the Eucharist, but I didn't ever realize that there was this excommunication part of it. How many of you did know that? Okay, so a number of you. Okay. In wrapping my mind around that, this is what I was considering. In Vatican II, with Pope John Paul II there was a call to revise canon law, or to update canon law, and this actually happened in 1983. Prior to that, we had a code that was from the early 1900s, and then prior to that, it was centuries and centuries. Okay, so, and really that code was an amalgamation of a lot of different laws, and there was a lot of accretions in that. My thought on that was, getting into 1983, they were tightening everything up, and that's where they just quietly said, no, it's not excommunicated. Does this make sense to you?
Yeah.
Now, again, I have some background. I'm not saying that was the answer, but that's just the way that I'm trying to make sense of it. Because excommunicating a person because they're divorced doesn't make sense, really, and the church acknowledges that. Okay. We want the church to do more than just acknowledge that excommunication is a bad idea for divorced people. We want the church to actually institutionalize helps for people that are divorced. And that's what our ministry is about. And as the Catholic Divorce Ministry Organization, we want to offer tools that are going to help you minister to those people. And that, I think, is what Julie's going to talk about. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. Thanks, Steve. I'm looking at time, because we are on a time schedule. Just update me real quick, because I know we're running behind. How much time we have, because when's our break? When's our next speaker?
You got 20 minutes.
About 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't want to spend a lot of time then, because we physically have something to give you. So let me just go through this real quickly. Because this was Kelly's talk, and Steve, I think, did a fantastic job, and I'm coming up, and so I'm trying to use the things that Kelly had put together, and deliver her objectives and talk that she wanted. So what I'm getting into, and I get the kind of the crummy part of it, because this is all about the triggers and going into different feelings and emotions that the divorced people go through. And let me just real quickly too tell you a little bit of my story. I just did a huge conference, or a one-day workshop. I had a therapist that talked about grief, and he too said, to work through your grief, you've got to tell your story. And you have to have people there to listen and to engage with you. So just real quickly, I was married 9.5 years and was in a situation where I wanted to do everything right. I was one of those that was very much a perfectionist and a good little girl. And so I did everything, went to high school, college, picked out a really nice degree to help people, and that was in nursing. I became a nurse. And got married. We had waited and decided to have one child, and I had a boy. And then 2.5 years later, it's like, let's have another child. I had a little girl, and we had the house, we had the little picket fence, and I even had the Volvo station wagon. I always share that. So this perfect, it was there. We had it all. And into my 9th year of marriage. My children were 2.5 and 5, and I was in complete denial. And my husband, I found out, was having an affair and with somebody at work, and just ripped my life apart at that stage, completely lost. So as I was newly divorced and separated, I sought out the church. The priest that married us, I went to him, and he's like, maybe I have a counselor for you, you know, here's the name of a counselor. And because I was a nurse, I had access to social workers at work, and they got me to a counselor right away. We did a little bit of individual counseling, and it didn't work, and I had to move on. I've been divorced a long time. I was a single mom for almost 18, 19 years. I went through the annulment process. I am remarried to someone else that was divorced. Conrad was only married 3 years, had no children. He went through the annulment process, and we were married in the church, and we've been married now for 11 years. And through that, I've been working with the ministry and running a support group for 25 years, almost 25 years. It was a little blur back then because I have to kind of think about it, but probably 25 years I've been running a support group, and 17 years the Office of Family Life, the director was going out to tell somebody how to run a group. She called me up and she goes, you know, you've been running a group for a long time, will you come with me? And I said, sure, I'll come with you. And after I did that, she goes, you know what, I think I can bring you on board part-time. I had a full-time job, but I'll bring you on as a consultant, and could you help me help parishes start support groups, or any phone calls that came into the Archdiocese? Will you mind taking those phone calls from people that are looking for separated and divorced? And I said yes, so I've been doing that for 17 years. I am now retired as a nurse, and doing a little bit more, and now I've gotten involved with the Catholic divorce ministry also. So that's kind of my story in a real tight nutshell. But anyway, just to start on kind of a high note, when I was really involved with the support group, my kids were little, and back then we had no cell phones, so calls came in through the you know, the message machine on your phone. And one day my son said, Mom, there's somebody that's called. I think you really need to call him back. It sounds, you know, like really urgent. And I'm like, okay, thanks for telling me that. And because I was doing this work through the Office of Family Life, he goes, Mom, it shouldn't be called the Office of Family Life. It should be called the Office of Get a Life. You guys need to get a life. And I'm like, you know, you're right. We do need to get a life. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get a life. And so I've always used that. In fact, the name of our group is the Healing Hearts Group. But I use that, and often people would just say, we're in the Get a Life group, you know, that's how it kind of came out. But what, you know, Kelly did, and this is going to be, we're going to give you a physical tool, but just briefly to go through that. Divorce triggers guilt, and you know, what does guilt mean to you? What when you say, oh, I feel guilty, or you know, you've got a lot of guilt. Pardon?
I could have done it better.
Could have done it better.
Blame.
Blame. Okay. All right. Blame. Yeah, it comes up. I had to look it up again in the dictionary. I thought, let me see what it says. Feeling responsible or feeling remorse. So I feel responsible and I feel remorse for some offense, crime, and wrong. I mean, look at how negative that is. Whether real or imagined. So, you know, just think of what's happening with that amount of guilt. We feel guilty even if we did not want the divorce. There's this guilt and blame that goes on oftentimes during that time. And oftentimes it's the one that is leaving that feels really guilty, and they don't think the other one that's been left behind feels guilty, but they feel guilty also. There's a lot of blame that goes in between that. The groups I've run, most people that come into the rooms, I would say 70% of them are normally the ones that have been left behind. And the other ones are the ones that chose and decided to leave the relationship. But there is a lot of guilt that goes on with that. could not keep God's promise. What did Steve say? My vocation was marriage. Our vocation of marriage is gone. We lost it. What is our vocation now in the marriage sense? What happened to it? Unable to hold the family together. The guilt I felt about, oh my God, what about my kids? What about my 2 kids? What about my family? What you know, the guilt of what my relationship with God. Did I have one anymore? The guilt of being a part of the church anymore. Was I really a part of that anymore? I felt so guilty. Someone did tell me though, with the kids, the healthier you get, Julie, the healthier your kids will be. Because I was so focused on the kids to start with. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Let's work on you. Let's stay focused on you. Let's get that going. And then Steve mentioned the complications of the journey of healing. Steve mentioned a little bit, and Kelly kind of brought it out in her talk a lot, about those rituals we have for the when a spouse passes away. We don't have those rituals or those people that are there for us in the same way. We get blocked oftentimes with our healing, our journey of healing because of that. But we do have, again, like Steve said, in the church, we have those sacraments. We can, and there is such a still misunderstanding about that. I will have people come into the support group and go, I can't go to confession, I can't go to communion. Yes, you can. You can go. The church does not say you can't do that. And we have to repeat that over and over again to them. And then at some point, the decree of nullity, the annulment process, people will come in and go, I will never get an annulment, ever, ever. I am not going to say my kids are illegitimate. I was married and I am married for life. And you know what? I say right now, that's okay. If that's where you're at, that's okay. That's where you need to be. Just, you know, if you, on this healing journey, there may be a point where you want to, and a really good, it was, a woman had been married for 50 years and she had 5 children, and she came in and told me that. And I understood. She'd been married 50 years, and she said to me, probably 3 or 4 years down her journey, she came back to me. She had finished the group, but had come back when we had some social things, and she goes, guess what? And I go, what? She goes, I'm going through the annulment process. And I liked what Steve said, because she was doing it for her children also. There's such a healing for the adult children or little kids or whatever for that. Grief, another word. I had a hard time. How do you define grief? What is it? What is it to you when someone's grieving? Yes?
Grieving the death of a spouse that never existed.
Good. I had to look it up again. I wanted to see just, you know, what it said in the dictionary. A deep sorrow, this is their first definition, a deep sorrow, especially that caused by someone's death. And here it is, it's the death of that marriage that we've lost. And we've lost that dream of living happily ever after. And all the plans that we made, the retirements that we had, the houses that we had, the children that we had together, our vacations, our future down, it's gone. It's where you know, where am I now? Where do I go? How do I do this? I don't know what to do. That's what I did. I kept going, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Reminding constantly of the abandonment and questions of your self-esteem. I had no self-esteem left. I lost everything about how I felt about myself. And it was there were these little angels that came into my life that kept lifting me up and saying, you know what, you're going to be okay. That source of hope that we heard. Coming to the conferences and hearing other people's stories. And I thought, you know, if they can do it, then maybe I can do it. When I was in a support group and saw somebody that had been there a year longer, and I'm like, wow, they came that far in 1 year? I guess I could do that. I think I can do that. And even when we go through some of the programs, they're all on rebuilding when relationships end, you know, growing through your divorce, you know, single again, the uncertain journey, you know, divorced Catholics, now what, you know, surviving divorce. All these programs have that in that. And again, no traditions for support or encouragement for that healing. There's no ceremony for grief, and we talked a little bit about that, how, you know, we have those ceremonies. There's a great program, and I've incorporated it into my support group at the end of the 10 weeks. We have a healing ceremony where we physically bring up pictures of our spouses, and we put them in front of the cross and the crucifix, and I bless them. Some people have even taken their wedding ring symbolically and put it into their basket. Giving closure and embracing each other through that time to get rid of that. Yes?
Going back, when you said that, it made me think on the other slide where it talked about the, God's promise, and, and it struck me that you didn't necessarily abandon the promise, the other person did.
Right.
And that to make folks realize that you didn't do anything, you still wanted to keep the promise.
Right.
It just kind of hit me.
And that's a very good point. Yeah. I think it is. And my counselor said that. I finally had to let go of that. He goes, I can't help make this marriage come together if that other person isn't, your husband's not here. And I finally said, oh yeah, I could stand on my head and try to do jumping jacks. I wasn't going to bring him back. And that, again, that grief of losing that, because I was trying so hard and to let go of that. I think that's a really good point. Anger, I don't think we need to really define that too much. It says that it's a strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, and hostility. And what we're angry at angry at ourselves, our spouse, former family, friends, and even God. You know, it was the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. Why didn't I see it? Why didn't I work harder? Why didn't I do this? And then anger, rage into my former husband, rage for me. And I've had, I think men have a harder time sometimes. Women can talk, blah, 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 blah. We talk. Men don't know what to do. I had men in my group where they did not know what to do with their anger. They didn't do that same way. One started hiking. One started, you know, praying a lot more. Unfortunately, one did notice that he started drinking. He started withdrawing. Men become very, they go into their work. They just pour all their time into their work. And that's where support groups help, and to see the recovery of these people. The miracles I've seen over the years with people that have come in and what God's plan has done for them is beyond explanation sometimes. And I think for me, for men, that was when I understood men better, was in that support group. The love, the caring that I saw, them opening up and sharing with us women. It's always a little lopsided. There's always more women and men, and I'm glad to see so many men here. That really helped me understand and have compassion and love for men much differently than I ever had before. And that's actually where I met my husband. He was in another support group, and we met socially at some point. Divorce, Kelly says, is one of the top reasons people leave the church, and anger is the motivating factor. I am so mad at the church. Where were they? Where are they? Have they helped me at all? Have they done anything for me? And they're talking about this annulment thing, and you know, everything's all about marriage, and I go to church and they're all married and they're all sitting there and all of that. And people they do leave the church. Real briefly, again, I had an email from a girl blasting. I mean, I can't find anybody in my parish. I went to my other parish. I'm sure you're not going to be able to help me out because nobody else in the church has helped me out. And because, you know, I've been doing this for a while, I kind of chuckled. I showed it to my husband, and he goes, well, you know, you got to email her back. And so I thanked her. I said, thank you so much for reaching out and looking and trying to find something for you. This is a hard time for you. I'm so grateful because she lived close. I'm running a support group, but we won't start for 2 months. Here are some handouts. You know, I could PDF them and send. Here's some handouts for you right now. Here's another program. They're having a beginning experience weekend. I work very closely with that program. Maybe you might be interested in that. But please stay in touch with me, and I will let you know when we start. She came into our program, and She is now a facilitator for the beginning experience, and I have a little volunteer board of people, and she's helping out now. She was a miracle. And she laughs, she goes, I can't believe Julie ever even emailed me back. I was so angry that I thought, I'll never hear from her because I, just, dumped all over her. But anyway, there is so much anger that's going on because of and it's not directed personally to anybody. Yes, Andrew? Oh, 5 minutes, okay. So she's giving me the high five here. So shame, another word that we kind of take, like, okay, what is shame? It's a painful feeling of humiliation, of distress caused by consciousness of wrong or a foolish behavior. Well, hopefully it's not foolish behavior, but